Welcome, everyone. I know that folks are still coming in from the waiting room, and we will be admitting more students throughout the conversation. But I think, we have a great participation. We have great participation happening here. So we're going to jump right on in. I'm going to ask our panelists, first of all, actually, just some quick housekeeping. For all the folks joining us, our guests, please know that this conversation is being recorded. Please make sure that you mute your microphones. You're welcome to keep your video off so we can keep the attention on our panelists today. I also want to encourage you to ask questions in the chat. I will be facilitating the conversation with our panelists today, so I'm happy to share questions that come in through the chat. I do have some prepared questions, but this time is for you. So if you have specific questions that you want addressed, please put them in the chat and I'll make sure to ask those questions. Again, a quick reminder to our guests to please make sure to mute your microphone so that we can put our attention to our panelists. And with that, I'm going to get started. My name is Heidi Nunez. I'm the Director of Career Development. I want to welcome all of our students, our student guests today to one of our final programs for a really exciting new program that we had here in Career Week. I want to thank everybody for participating in the full week of activities. Today, we definitely saved the best for last with this panel here, and I'm so excited to turn it over in a second. Sorry, just remembered one last piece of housekeeping here. Card 101 and 102 students, please remember to head towards your Google form if you're looking to get credit for this session. Okay, commercial over. Let's turn it over to our panelists. Connor, Emma, Kenzie, thank you so much for being here today. I want to just get started by having you introduce yourself, and I'll call on you based on how I see you here on my screen. So Kenzie, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us where you are and what you are doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Kenzie Yates. I graduated in December of 19, and last year I took a position with, or an opportunity to join a kind of small nonprofit group in the area to start a new initiative to support social entrepreneurs across the globe. So my job looks like running a fellowship program for a small group of entrepreneurs and helping them get started on their businesses. It's like exactly what I wanted to be doing. So I was really happy to have that opportunity. I'm still living in the Naperville area, and I also do a little bit of like freelance contract marketing work on the side.
Thank you. Connor, tell us about what you're doing now.
Nice to meet everybody. My name is Connor McGurry. Graduated from North Central with my undergrad in 2018 and my master's in 2020. Right now I work for a company called Glory Global Solutions, and I work on our global innovation team. And so I primarily do new product development for banking and retail. And so we're kind of like a corporate incubator. And so we get to come up with ideas and test them with people and then hopefully bring them to market and sell them. So excited to be here and excited to answer questions and see however I can help.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here with us, Connor. Emma, tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I graduated with my undergrad in 18 and then my master's in 19 from NIU, not North Central. Since then, I've been working for Medline Industries, Inc. So we've had a crazy year with the pandemic, very high demand. If you're ever in a hospital, look out for the little emblem. If you can see it there, the blue with the Medline in the middle. So I've been with them for almost 2 years now. I'm in a finance rotational program. So it's a 3-year program where you do 4 different jobs. So I'm in my 3rd position now, and in June, I'll start my 4th. And then a year from June, I'll officially graduate into a senior level position, either be it in accounting or finance.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I want to say, first of all, welcome home. Right. So all of you were graduated from North Central. Tell us about your North Central, what you did when you were a student at North Central. What was your major? What were some of the activities that you were involved with? Give us a little glimpse of what student life was like for you. I'll start with Connor this time.
That's great by me.
Yeah, so I was, when I was on campus, I did, my major was entrepreneurship and small business management. And then I did minors in finance, international business, and I studied Mandarin while I was on campus as well. So from a academic perspective, I had kind of the benefit of taking a lot of different courses, which I really liked. I think it's been super useful. And from kind of a getting involved on campus perspective, I joined Enactus, I did EBO, I was part of student government. And so North Central obviously makes it super easy to get involved. And so there was a lot of different opportunities to take what I was doing in class and bring it in kind of more of a functional place where we could kind of experiment and have fun with it. So I certainly tried to take, whatever experiences I could and kind of run with it. So definitely try to stay active. And I think that'd be one piece of advice as well, is just get active and do what you can.
Great. Kenzie.
Mhm. Yeah, my major was in marketing. I did a minor in business administration, and then most of my involvement on campus centered in Enactus too. Connor and I worked together a lot there, setting up the coffee lab, all the coffee business, all of that stuff. And I ended up through the Enactus chapter at North Central. I then got involved with Enactus USA and Global. And so I was on an advisory committee with them too. That was an opportunity that came out of just being involved in our program and led to a ton of other opportunities through that. So that one took up the majority of my time. So that was most of my involvement around campus.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Emma.
Oh, sorry, that's my dog.
No problem.
She's in the background. We'll just talk over her. So
Like
my time
dogs.
at North Central was kind of concentrated. I did undergrad in 3 years. So my accounting was my major, and then I had finance and econ minors. And while I was on campus, as far as student involvement, I was in the management office for Student Accounting Society. And then outside of that, I also worked a lot. So my first year I lived on campus and I worked at Kaufman. I worked in the bakery for almost a whole year. And then my second 2 years I lived off campus and commuted. And I worked between the Argonne National Laboratory for the first half and then an internship at Aldi at their corporate office in taxation. So it was good. And the connection for Aldi came from a tax professor. So it all stemmed from North Central.
Fantastic. You're hitting on my next question here, because one of the things I wanted to hear from you all is how you ended up in your roles. What brought you to your current organizations, and what led you to your current role? And Emma, since you started talking about this a little bit, is there anything more you want to share?
Yeah, of course. So I was with Aldi for 1.5 years. I did a summer internship and then stayed on, and then did a second summer internship after I graduated. So it was from summer of 17 through summer of 18. And I liked my time there, but when I was there, it wasn't a program. It wasn't quite structured. So there were 4 positions for interns, and we basically helped with extra projects. And I knew in my first role, I wanted more of a structural program so that I could test the waters, try the different areas within finance and accounting, and figure out what I really liked outside of the classroom. So instead of going on full-time with Aldi, I did the extra year to get my master's at NIU. And then I found Medline at a career fair there. So I actually, when I took that job, had 3 rotational offers that I was picking from between a Coca-Cola bottling company, John Deere, and Medline. And taking the extra year to build on top of my NIU or my North Central undergrad gave me the opportunity to get in front of some of the larger businesses at a state school career fair.
That's fantastic. Kenzie, can you tell us about how you ended up with your organization and in your role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the group that I'm with, or how the position came up, was kind of connected through a family friend that I had built relationship with over my college years. And the organization was looking to start a new initiative around social entrepreneurship. And because of my background at North Central and everything that I was invested into that space, became a really natural fit. But also I kind of got to create my own position into it. So I kind of came to the nonprofit and said, hey, here's what I would love to be doing. And I think there's a natural fit here. Are you guys open to just talking that through and seeing what happens? And I think that was kind of a skill that I learned at North Central, and in a safer environment, was just asking for opportunities and seeing what happens. I remember I had a professor, Whitney Roberts from the Center for Social Impact, just say ask for the opportunities. There's a lot available on this campus that people just don't know to ask for, or don't think that if they ask, they'll get turned down. And so I think that was like a skill that I learned to practice well, like in that space in North Central, and had a lot of great yeses come out. Yes, there were no's, but like had a lot of good yeses come from it, to where I felt pretty comfortable when I'm graduating to go and ask people like, hey, can I create my own position into what you're doing too? So that's how my job came to be.
That's really fantastic advice, and thank you for sharing that with our students today. Connor.
Yeah, so I actually found my current role on LinkedIn. And so at the time when I applied, I was actually working at North Central with Coffee Lab. I had to plug career development. I had spent a lot of time working with career development staff on resume and my LinkedIn, specifically because I knew eventually it was going to kind of be that one thing that could help me differentiate and be kind of my public face into getting into a new career. And so I applied directly on LinkedIn. And Glory called me back and asked if I was interested, and kind of explained the position. And I think what attracted me to it was it was a brand new team being assembled. And so I was the first hire for my boss on the new team. And so similar to Kenzie, having that opportunity kind of go into something that had not been previously defined and kind of help develop the job description and what I was going to be doing day to day was kind of exciting for me. And at the same time, I had an interest in working in international business. And so being able to travel, being able to work with our offices and customers overseas was a big interest. So it was kind of the perfect opportunity to get some of those kind of initial boxes checked off my list of what I wanted. And, you know, I'm super thankful because I have a great boss who's kind of thrown me into the mix and allowed me to learn and has been very patient. And so I think that was definitely one of the things to look for in the first job is not only are you interested in it, but are you going into an environment that is going to help you learn? You're not just there for the paycheck, but you're there for having fun. You know, if you're going to spend 40 something hours a week there, you want to make sure you like what you're doing and that you're getting something else out of it too. And so that definitely came up and was a good opportunity.
Yeah, that's really, really important. I know that we can spend so much time on career path type questions and how you found your roles and all the different experiences that led you to there. Students, if you want me to ask more of those questions, please drop them in the chat because I think we have some amazing experiences here in front of us. So please let us know. I do want to transition the conversation a little bit on what your work transition looked like, right? What was it like transitioning from being a student to being a working professional, right? What are some of the things that either surprised you or challenged you, or you felt really, really prepared for because of something that you did at North Central? I'll start with Emma.
Yeah, so my transition was a little unique. Graduating from North Central, having the normal student life, and then going to grad school. I was in grad school, but also a graduate assistant teaching a class. So it was kind of a middleman where instead of having classes and then also running to my second job, it was all at the college, which is something that's similar to when you actually start working full time, that I thought was nice to no longer be running back and forth to all the different classes and work in between. You just go to one place and stay there all day in my situation. So it was nice to have that middleman where my transition to grad school was all in one place, but still wearing different suits throughout the day. And then going to work, it was nice to kind of be at the bottom. I like that there's structure and that I have all these people to ask questions to, and there's a clear path for moving forward. Whereas in school, it's always about the next test. So I like that it's more long-term in that view. And as far as getting used to it, I think I was really tired the first few months, honestly. It's a lot different to go sit at a desk and work for 10 hours than it is to go to a few classes throughout the day and do homework in the library or your room, and having environments change. It's just different and it's a little more exhausting, but it becomes the new normal. But I think that was the biggest unexpected change, that I was just really tired the first few months with the change.
Thanks for sharing that. Kenzie?
Yeah, I think I felt really prepared to, and like I said earlier, of like asking for opportunities and kind of creating my own space. Like I felt really like confident in my own ability to take initiative and to make things happen. Like whatever projects I would get past, like I felt comfortable taking initiative in that way. I think what surprised me the most was like probably more so in the job transition itself or finding a job and searching. And I know the experience of all my friends has been really similar, that it takes longer and it takes more energy out of you than I probably would have ever expected. Because I sent like so many job applications to so many different companies, and you just hear back from maybe 1% of them. You don't hear back from the 90% of companies that you
Yeah.
apply to. And I think that was like kind of a hard reality to get hit with right off the bat, was like, these are positions that I know I'm qualified for. But when you're applying to organizations that you do really love, and they're loved for a reason, they get a lot of applicants. And so you do have to stand out if you're going to ever get a call back on those. But yeah, I think that was like kind of the hard reality, was just how long the process actually took. I had been working with a consulting firm all of college part-time. And so I was really grateful to have like transitionary work during that period too, of looking to do something different. But it really, like, I graduated in December and I didn't start into my new job until June. So, and I had been job searching that whole time as well. And so my journey looked maybe atypical, but still, like, just the fact that it did take so long to really land into what was the next part of my career, I think was probably what I was most surprised by. I think also, like, in college, going into a classroom, like, you get a syllabus and rubrics for everything, and you have like expectations pretty clearly set for you. And I think that that's like the biggest difference I feel like between college and my career path, is like, I don't have always clear expectations from my boss, or like for a project that's going on, like, I have to be the one to drive, like, hey, what do you expect of me from this? Like, what does a successful end of this project look like, especially when you're just creating and starting something new? Everybody has expectations, but they're not stated unless you really ask and drive for that, which I think does like set you apart early in your career if you can be the one to ask those questions. But that's a really hard one. It's like, you just don't really, it's not laid out for you what success looks like. You have to kind of define that and be clear for yourself along the way if you want to have something to drive towards.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're recording this, because these are really great points. I'm glad you're sharing that. Connor?
I would touch on, I think, something that both Emma and Kenzie mentioned, which is the first being, it definitely requires you, transitioning from kind of student life into a career requires you to get really good at time management, not only while you're working, but when you think about your entire week and when you have to get things done, whether you're volunteering or you have to run to the post office or the store, whatever it might be. It suddenly becomes a little bit more challenging, because you have to start to get creative with how you use your time and start to prioritize. And so I think one thing that was really important for me was setting time to still do the things that I felt like were important every week, like going to the gym or making time to, go see a friend for coffee or lunch, whatever. So even though, work can get crazy sometimes, I think it's still important that you identify what those key things are that you want to maintain. And I think you will then find a way to kind of introduce them into your week. And so it's not always that, work has to dominate your entire week. You can get creative with your time and shift things around as much as you need. And I think to Kenzie's point, I think the ambiguity was definitely something that was different. And to her point, coming in with a class, you have a syllabus and you have expectations and due dates. And while that doesn't necessarily change always in your career, you certainly are going to have to make decisions with less information. You're going to have to get comfortable asking questions. And so I think because of that, I was surprised by how helpful people are in the company to kind of support you in that effort. And so you don't, at least, and I speak from my experience, I've never felt like when I don't have all the information, I can't ask a question, I can't go for help or figure out how somebody has done something before. And so I think that's really important, that in the first 30 days, you introduce yourself to people, you ask questions, you get comfortable, so that if you have a question on a budgeting thing, you can go to the person who may have really great experience in budgeting. And so just kind of tearing down those walls that sometimes can exist and kind of neutralizing that, I think, is super helpful when you're first starting out, because it just gives you way more resources to be successful.
I have to say, you all have confirmed something that we heard this morning. We just had a conversation this morning with a few of the area colleges and area companies that recruit from these colleges, and they were asking very similar questions, right? Like, what can help prepare students to transition to work? And they, by and large, really hit on pretty much what you guys are saying right now, right? So from their perspective, they said students need to uh, uh, practice being responsive, right? So not just replying to messages, but knowing when to reach out to say, I don't know how to do this, or I need help with this. Reaching out early on when you're struggling with something or don't know something, and understanding that their employers get it. They understand you're learning. They understand, you've been in Zoom meetings all day long. You can't take another one. So just the ability to reach out to your employer and communicate was the other one that they mentioned, that communicating where you need help, need more information, need support, or want more. So just generally communicating was a big one that they mentioned. And of course, the time management. Right, Connor, you nailed this from what you were just mentioning here, right? That the transition of how to manage time, and Kenzie, you as well, right? It's not prescripted for you. You really have to flex those skills in how to manage your time there. So I just thought that was an interesting note that I wanted to share with all of you, that your perspectives were correlating with what we heard this morning from our employers as well. So I want to ask about the
I have a quick
actual.
question.
Oh yes, please.
Is there a career fair coming up anytime soon? Are they still being held virtually?
So that was the big topic of the morning, is what's recruiting going to look like throughout the summer and throughout the fall. And what we're hearing is that it is a mixed bag, but that there will be a lot of still virtual recruiting taking place. There aren't currently any career fairs taking place at North Central or with some of the organizations that we've been involved with, but I know that there's still a lot of positions available. As a matter of fact, of the employers that we met with today, 80% of them said they are still hiring within the next 90 days. And they're posting things on Handshake, and they're posting on Indeed. So they are definitely recruiting virtually right now. I don't know if that got to your question, Emma.
Yeah, it did. I just know that since I found Medline in my current position through a career fair, it was really helpful. It helped alleviate. There was no space between graduation and starting. It was like 2 weeks. I signed on in the fall and then started when I graduated. So I wasn't sure if there were any opportunities for current students to find a position before graduation.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now we have literally thousands of full-time positions available on Handshake. And we know, because the nature of recruitment is virtual right now, that's where all of our employers are. They're trying to find you online through LinkedIn, through Handshake, through Indeed. So they're definitely out there. And I know that there's conversation right now about what the job market looks like, and what the employment market and unemployment market is looking like. But all of the indicators from our employers are pointing to the fact that opportunity is still there. And much to what Kenzie was saying, it's going to take a lot of patience and understanding. There's going to be a lot of applications being sent out. There's going to be a lot of cover letters and resumes, and a lot of online profiles happening. And you'll get a couple hits back, but not as many as you're going to be sending out. And that's pretty much what the job search looks like there. I'm curious about your actual transition and what that looked like your first 30 days, right? What did onboarding look like? What was orientation like? Did you feel supported? Did you have a mentor? I think that's one of the things that students worry about is, am I going to go in and just be thrown into my task? What did that look like for all of you when you were joining your organization?
I can go ahead and kick this off. That was one benefit of my position that I was looking for, is the structure, like I mentioned before, and it might be my accounting type A personality, but I like having everything laid out. So the position I'm in is a class, so it's a class of 6, and I'm the 4th year. So now we're just about getting ready to hire the 6th year. But that was something I really liked, is that it's so small, and you're switching every 6 or 12 months. So when I started, I was starting with 5 other people who were all new grads. We were all starting together. We were all at the same playing field. We were all going into different positions, but we're all brand new. So we go through orientation together. The structure is set out as far as who you're reporting to, and then the person in your program who just got done with that role then trains you in your new role. So I would say it was handled very well. The training takes maybe 4 weeks in total, and the person training you will help you along the way. Just basically take over task by task as you're trained on them. But at least for the first week, it was mostly onboarding. It was getting you your computer, getting your logins, making sure you know the campus, etc. Our campus is really large, so you do get lost in the beginning. But yeah, there was no like high expectation, like jump in and start making financial statements your first week. It was very guided, and they understand the jitters and the nervousness and how difficult the transition can be the first few weeks when you first graduate. So it was nice for me looking for a program that's designed for new grads. I feel like there was no ball dropped along the way. Every concern I had was met with an answer. And I would recommend it to anyone.
And Emma, you mentioned this is a fairly large company, right?
Yeah, so Medline total gross revenue is about 20 billion, and the headquarters are in Northfield. So our campus is about 3,000 people. So it's rather large, but I am within only finance. So I was happy to find a program that's so small. So my class is only 6 people versus the John Deere program that I was considering, also finance, was 30 people. So in that position, you get a lot more exposure to the higher up people within your department when you find a place that's smaller like that. And it sounds like Kenzie and Connor have the same experience. They like being on a smaller team and getting more exposure.
Yeah, anyone else who wants to jump in on this question?
I would just say I did not necessarily have a super traditional onboarding period because I was the first person being brought onto the team by my boss. And so it was, well, I had kind of I had an HR contact that helped me get acclimated from kind of that end of the company. It was a lot of just kind of learning as you go. And to be fair, I think truthfully, my boss was kind of transparent. He said, you know, I'm not even entirely sure what your position is going to look like. And that was kind of the exciting part. And so I never felt like I was alone in that because we were kind of discovering that together. And yet we had the resources of kind of this big company to do it in a place that was very comfortable and kind of the right pace to get going. And so I think in the first 30 days, it was a lot of, I got onboarded to a project that I was owning, met people in the office. I was traveling in the first 30 days. And so it was kind of it was a lot of different things. But again, I think it was just, you have to be willing to ask questions and say, I'm not 100% sure what this is or what I'm supposed to do here, or how do you usually do this, or how do you think it should be done? Because there's no sense in kind of spinning your wheels and just kind of frustration and this ambiguity. People are more than willing to help you if you just ask questions and say, hey, can you explain this to me, or how would you do it? And so I felt like that was a kind of a key component, was just getting comfortable asking those questions and kind of building my job description as we went along, just from having conversations on with who was around me.
Yeah, I think my experience is probably a lot more similar to Connor's, which is like what I wanted. So like Emma saying, like she wanted the structure, I wanted no structure. So I think we're a little opposite in that way, which is great. But I had been like familiar with the work of the organization and kind of what the new initiative I was going to be starting was going to look like. So my first 30 days were less about like what the work itself was going to be, because I knew I was going to be creating so much of it. But it was more about like acclimating to the team dynamic and like how I was going to work with my boss. So it's me, my boss, and then I have one other coworker. So we spent a lot of time though, like we did a couple like personality tests kind of things. One of them called Culture Index or DISC personality, or just a few different things that helped us like really figure out how we're like similar and different, ways that we're going to butt heads, ways that we're going to work well together. And so we kind of like, I think from the beginning, developed a like a level of trust that we know we're going to have conflict. Like both my boss and I are really like strong-headed people. So we're like, clearly there's going to be a point where we're going to have decisions that are going to come up that we're both going to have a very strong viewpoint on, that are probably going to be different. And we're going to have to figure out how to work our way through that. So I think spending time like in the very beginning, and this is something my boss led, which I am like super, super grateful for, was just like spending a lot of time figuring out how we work through those kind of things and like developing a bit of a communication plan or a hierarchy of like, what kind of decisions does he want to be involved in? What decisions can I make on my own? And having things like that kind of mapped out from the beginning made our communication so much better. Now moving forward, like now we're almost a year into working together, and I feel like we have a really good rhythm of how we trust and communicate. And I have like several other friends who have either they're like internship supervisors, bosses, or have led this, or they've done it themselves, but just said like, how do we communicate best together? Do you prefer email over these things? Do you want me to like text and call you for these? Especially now, since like you're not going to just casually bump in your boss like in the break room in a normal office day, when you need to like be direct about how you communicate. Getting things like that figured out from the beginning was so great. So I'm really grateful that that's what my first 30 days kind of looked like.
You know, Kenzie, you brought up a really important consideration around what the work culture, I'm going to say, looks like when you say you wanted no structure, and Emma, you wanted very structured. I know that that's something that the students typically tend to struggle with, is how do I know what an organization's culture is going to look like and what I'm even looking for? What helped you all know what you were looking for in the day-to-day work culture, or are you still exploring?
Yeah, I'll kick that off. I think I think intuitively I knew some things about myself, just like how much more I gravitate towards startups and entrepreneurial type ventures and my like own niche to start my own things. But I think most of that, like in identifying what I actually wanted, came from my work experiences. So I'm grateful that I did work all of college in a consulting firm. So I had a little bit more to go off of as far as what I was looking for from a future boss, or did I even want to have a boss? Did I want to be my own boss right out of college? Like all those questions kind of came up off the bat. And I think I am, yes, like still figuring those things out, but experiences like Enactus particularly too, where it was like working in a team environment where you had to figure out like, what is my natural role in this group? And like, how do I actually best contribute? What are the points that frustrate me when I work in a team environment? So like, you can't, especially in the business college, like I feel like everything senior year is a group project. So things like that, of being able to recognize like, what are the points that frustrate me about being in this group? And then where do I feel like I'm in my like kind of genius zone where I work really well in this group? I think those experiences are the best ones to go off of right now, especially you don't have like work teams that you're a part of, to be able to say like, yeah, if this is something that frustrates me in this context, it's probably not something that I want to put myself into in a future career. And maybe it's like, if you're put in a position of leadership in the group project and you didn't want it, like, okay, that's a good thing to recognize. Like maybe you don't want to be somebody who's going to lead a team in your next job. So I think things like that helped to illuminate for me, like what I wanted out of my next position.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of reflection and introspection that went into that.
Mm-hmm.
Emma or Connor, any thoughts around that in terms of what helped you understand what you were looking for in terms of your work culture, your team? Go ahead, Emma.
I can go ahead and add something. Graduating, I feel like I knew exactly what I was looking for in the work. And when you're in finance and accounting, generally it'll be the same work no matter where you're at if you're going into corporate. So choosing the company that I wanted to work for was really vital. Because the job probably wouldn't be that much different between John Deere or Medline. And when I was walking through Medline, so it was like a 3-step interview process, and the third one was a full tour before final interviews, and then offers would go out after that. So when we were doing the final walkthrough on the third interview day, just looking around at the people, like people that have nothing to do with your department, and like, do they look happy? And like so many people there just looked like they were enjoying their job. And it's like, okay, well, this is somewhere I want to be. And then on top of that, there were 3 classes above me, and those were like our mentors. Because I mean, really, they're only a few years older than you. They're basically your peers. And they all just raved about the program, and especially hearing it from them, who were basically the guinea pigs. If they're happy with their decision, then it gave me full confidence in my decision as well. But yeah, I think if you get the opportunity to do a tour or meet different people throughout the company before accepting an offer, it's if they're happy, then you're most likely also going to be happy. So with my business, it was just a feeling. Like, of the 3 places I toured, that one just felt like cliche, but it kind of just felt like home. So yeah.
Good.
I would just add, I think I knew that I wanted to be in kind of an environment that was more creative and a little bit faster paced and kind of open. And so I think part of the luxury of being one of the first on the team is kind of you set those norms for how that looks in the future when more people join. But I think if you're going into an existing team, I think it's trying to kind of identify how do people work together. Again, what are their personality types? And I think it's hard to, I mean, you may have your interests and you think I may really like this company going in, and you may interview and you may realize it's not the right fit. But I think if you're fortunate enough to get to that interview part, I think that's where you can really start to ask the tough questions on, is this a place that I really want to work? And is this a place where I'd be a good fit? And so, one of the interview questions that I was always, a mentor of mine told me was ask the people, why do they come to work every day? And so I asked that question for Glory, and every single person, I had 3 different people that interviewed me, and all of them said the people. And so that was kind of a good sign for me that I wanted to work somewhere where people were the priority and people liked working together, and there was a lot of engagement and creativity and fun. And so just, when you're getting interviewed, you're also kind of interviewing them as well to make sure it's the right fit. And so obviously you don't want to sit there and rattle off, 100 questions to them like you're the interviewer, but take the time and ask them questions about, what is the culture like, and who are you as an individual, and what's it like to work with you and the rest of the team, because it's good insight. And it's important that you make sure that it's the right fit and that the priorities line up, because again, you're spending a lot of time there every week, and you want to do something that you like with people, that you like, and all have the same passion and purpose.
Thank you. That's incredibly important. I want to make sure that I open this up to not just my questions. So students, please make sure if you have questions to ask the panelists, since they're here, they're giving their time to you. They're of course invested in your success by being here and wanting to give you their best advice. Having said that, let me ask you very specifically, right? I suspect that there will be a number of students listening in who are, of course, we have students who are still exploring their career paths. We know for sure that there are students on the call who are actively applying to their full-time positions in their roles. But we know that there are students who are definitely about to make this transition into full-time employment. What are your words of advice for them? How should they prepare in these last few weeks of being a North Central College student? What should they be preparing to transition into full-time employment to be the most successful in their new role?
I can go ahead and kick this off. When I graduated, I remember being so terrified that I wouldn't be smart enough. And I think you need to just let that go and believe in your capabilities and what you've learned at North Central, because it's enough. And when you start your new position, it's really about the people. It's about making the connections and being the person that people feel comfortable to go to. And throughout the 3 roles I've had in the last 2 years, the number one feedback has been organization. So in my positions, I would usually have a manager and a senior, and I would meet with the senior probably twice a week for an hour for one-on-one sessions, just so that we can go over any topics that were going on, any projects, and any questions. And for all of these meetings, always bring an agenda. It can just be a 1-page Word doc that has the date, the time, the people in the meeting, and listed topics that you're currently working on. But having that 1 sheet of paper, will keep you on track so that you're organized and you know what you're dealing with. But also, it's a very little effort for very impressive feedback. So a lot of the managers just think it's amazing that you come prepared. So it helps you in the forefront, but then also it makes you look like you've got all your stuff together, which is great. And honestly, small things like that, I feel like, are what differentiates good employees from great employees. So I would say have confidence in what you know. Don't overthink the technical aspects, because going into a position, you won't know everything. It's going to be specific to where you are, especially if you're in like a technical role. And then have the confidence to ask questions and make those connections with the people you're working with, because really that's, like Connor said, that's the difference between enjoying your job, is having those connections, and then getting your name out in the company. If it is larger, you want to get to the point where people know you. Like I've got some salespeople where if they have a partner come to them and they have a finance question, I get emails from random people just because I talk to everyone and they're like, this is my finance contact. Even if I'm not the right person, it's awesome to have that many people know your name and come to you because they have confidence in you and you'll respond and you'll work for them. So I would say work on the relationships the most.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think my best advice at this point is to lean into your curiosity. I really think that like curiosity is probably one of the biggest skills that you can cultivate that'll take you the furthest in life. And especially when you're like new into an organization and like you're gonna meet a lot of new people or just have a lot of different conversations, and it is gonna feel like um I think to Emma's point, like you can kind of get in your head of like, oh, I'm behind because I don't know like these terms or this lingo, or like every organization has like, it literally feels like their own language of how they all communicate and talk. And there's just like, there's always going to be like acronyms and verbiage stuff. You're like, I don't know what this means. But I think just like taking the perspective, like I'm just going to be curious in the process and I don't have to have it figured out, but I can just ask questions. And like, if you hear something that you don't understand, like having the confidence to just say, hey, what is that? Like, can you teach me about this thing? I think one thing I've learned so much over the last few years is like people love to give away the wisdom that they've learned. Like even us here, like this is like fun for us to share what we've gone through in the last few years. Like anybody else that you're going to work with, like they want to share what they've been given to. And so giving them the opportunity to do that, like, hey, like how did you go about doing this, or like what did you learn on your first week here at the company, and like asking those kind of questions. And if you meet people like in a meeting that seem interesting, like just shooting them an email later, like, hey, can we grab a 20-minute call, can we grab coffee together, something like that. And just getting to know people. Like I love Emma saying that like if there's people all across the company that are emailing her with questions, even if she's not like the technically perfect person or something like that. That's great, because like if you position yourself in that way that you're just like you're curious, you're able to help, you're willing to learn in the process. Like I think people are going to be that much more willing to come to you, and there is a bigger opportunity because they know that you're willing to ask the hard questions.
Yeah, I would just say quickly to kind of go back to a previous point. I think if you're coming into a brand new organization, I think it's important to remember that no matter who you're talking to at the company, they all had their first day too. And that, they all had their first day when they were first starting out in the career, probably at a similar age to you as well. And so whether that's at the same company or a previous one, everybody has been in your shoes. And so they all recognize that, and everybody's going to kind of, be willing to be patient with you and understand that you're still learning. And so I would totally agree with Emma's point that don't let the imposter syndrome get the best of you, because nobody is a absolute genius at everything they do. And there's always a learning process. And part of the fun part about working is kind of surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you to learn from them and kind of share those experiences. I think the other part just quickly is say yes to things very early on, and do it whenever, if your boss comes to you and says, hey, do you want to try this? Or do you think you can handle this? Yes. Even if you're not 100% certain, that's where that networking comes in, where you can ask questions, or, part of it is just kind of putting yourself out there and being uncomfortable and saying, I have no idea what this might entail, but I'm going to figure out and fight through it and see what happens. And so I think saying yes is really, really important, because it will open up a lot more doors. And I think you will get that confidence to work in the ambiguity and maybe those more difficult tasks in the future.
Yeah, I think you're all pointing to some really important learnings, I think, about being understanding about your vulnerabilities and where you need to grow a little bit. And I'm curious, I know because we have some time, I hope you don't mind my asking a different type of question, but Emma, you specifically mentioned feedback. And I think that means to me that, of course, we all have room to grow, right? We have supervisors who are telling us how they're supporting us and telling us how to do things, and maybe are telling us when we're not doing things so well, right? So I'm curious if you all would be willing to share maybe some false starts that you've had, right? Like maybe, you thought you were going down a certain path and you realized this is not for you, or some missteps that you had, thinking, you were doing something right and really you had to change, correct course a little bit. Can you talk about, from that perspective? Because I think you're absolutely right. Students are nervous about thinking that they have to be 100% every time to even be considered for a callback and that kind of thing. Can you share from that perspective?
Yeah, I'll start and say that, and I think kind of starting off with the whole feedback. I think in my job, we have set times each week where we propose new ideas that we've come up with. And so at first, it's really uncomfortable to share an idea that you have with people because there is always the potential to say, Connor, that's not a great idea. And eventually, you get used to sharing feedback and being comfortable, not only taking constructive feedback, but also offering feedback in a positive way. And so number one, I think that's really important, that you get comfortable just being able to learn and identify where you're making mistakes and get better over time. And I mean, I can certainly think of my first project was working and managing a software development project where we were managing an outside vendor that we were using. And so I came in with no experience. I don't develop. I've never managed a software project, and I've never managed a vendor. And so, well, you always try to be like the duck, which is the calm on the surface and paddling like crazy underneath. That certainly came to life in the first, month or two on the job, because I was learning so quickly how to do all these different things. And at the same time, I was 23 years old, and being the point of contact for a team of 35-year-old plus, where they're probably thinking, oh my gosh, he's 23 and he's our contact, right? And so I immediately fell into that imposter syndrome and immediately fell into kind of that routine of, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And so there were certainly points in those first couple of weeks where I made mistakes and I wasn't as confident or as direct as I should have been. And so I finally went to the point where I went and had a conversation with my boss and just kind of said, I don't feel like I'm on the right track. I think I'm kind of losing control here. And he did something really great, which was he didn't come in and kind of lecture everybody else and say, hey, listen, guys, he's the one that, is supposed to do this. But he gave me the tools behind the scenes to say, have you tried this? Have you done this? Or I remember being in a situation like that. Here's what you should, at least try to do. And so again, he was patient with me and he took the time to outline the steps that he had taken. And had I not admitted that things were going wrong to him, I probably would not have been able to be successful in that project. And so it's just identifying when you need help and admitting that to yourself. Because if you try to just keep going and barreling through it, you're going to get burned out really quickly. And ultimately, if your name is signed to that project, you're going to have to explain why that is. So you have to be comfortable getting feedback and asking for help early on.
Great points. Kenzie or Emma?
Yeah, I think an experience that came to mind for me was actually like kind of in my job
You could just
searching.
listen to it from here.
Sorry if there's somebody else. Yeah, it was kind of an experience in my job searching journey. And I think this was like still during my last semester of school. I had really thought that I wanted to be working in a large organization and to be a part of just like getting exposed to a lot of different things. And so one of the companies that was in my mind was Starbucks, and I wanted to be within their social responsibility department. I wanted to like invest more into working with coffee farmers and understanding their needs. And I wanted to do that with the company that has the largest influence in the world in that department. So through connections through North Central, and then somebody else through my church, like I ended up having a couple of conversations with the manager for social responsibility at Starbucks corporate. And I remember going into that conversation thinking like, this is it. Like, I got to nail this one because like, she's going to hire me. Like, I know it. I can feel it in my bones. And I just like, we had a great conversation, like talk about all these, she just had the most interesting background. And I remember like, she just kept asking me like what I wanted to do. And I felt like I was explaining it like pretty clearly. I was like, yeah, I want to work with coffee farmers. I want to utilize the like tools and experiences I've learned in design thinking and innovation to be able to create systems that advocate for their rights. And she just kept like asking like more specific things. And I was like, I don't know how much more specific I can get. Like, I think that this is it. And I think like from that conversation, I walked out and I was like, I don't feel like I was the most like, I don't feel like I was the best version of myself in that conversation. It didn't feel like I came into it and like was the most me that I could be. And I think it also revealed like being in any large organization, like you have the more large the organization is, I think it depends on each company, but like typically the larger it is, the more specific your role is going to be. Mm-hmm. And just talking with her in that conversation, I was like, I don't want like a really hyper specific thing. I think if I join a job in which like it is clearly defined what my job description is, I think I will personally go crazy. So I think that was one of those things that it helped me to like, I felt like I put my best foot forward, like put my best effort into seeing if there was an opportunity here. It felt like things were lining up. And then I got to that point where I was like, actually, like, I just don't think that this is me. And so I'm glad that I gave myself like the chance to figure that out. Like I put the effort into having those conversations and getting those connections. But it got me to the point where I was able to say like, this isn't me. And I'm glad I figured that out before I like took a position or something and then was like,
Yeah.
oh, I actually hate this.
Yeah, really important to find that out
Mhm.
early. Emma, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I think about feedback and not only the good feedback, but the critical feedback, it's really all from a place of growth. All they're doing is telling you that to help you grow. And when you hear that, it can be really uncomfortable, and sitting with it can be uncomfortable. And then trying to do actions to get better at the things they criticized, it can all be uncomfortable, but uncomfortability leads to growth. And I think Kenzie and Connor, both the situations they described, they were uncomfortable. They didn't know what they were doing completely, but that's how you grow. And whether it be taking on a project you've never had before, going down a route that might not exactly be your career, be your like major. So for example, my specificity is accounting, and I did a rotational program in finance. So 1 out of my 4 roles is going to be accounting. The other 3 are ops or finance or inventory or whatever they may be. They're out of my comfort zone, but the more you put yourself out of your comfort zone, the more you'll grow and the more you'll be well-rounded and be a better asset to anyone coming to seek you. So I'd say as much as possible, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of the biggest feedbacks that I get as far as criticism is when I'm talking to business partners, I need to slow down, give them more time to digest what I'm saying, because I'm spitting out these numbers like a machine, and that's not what they digest every day. So it's good to sit and listen. And in my certain situation, it is generally about presenting that I get the most criticism about. So in that situation, record yourself, try to look back at it. So whichever area your company is criticizing you in, I would say try to do more in that area. Even if it's uncomfortable, it'll help you grow. And honestly, you'll probably find other people who are also struggling in that area, or you'll find experts in that area, which will only help you as well. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
I love that. I think that's incredibly important. I hope we have time for maybe 2 more questions if we could squeeze it in. I want to ask about relationships, right? I think sometimes it could be hard to be the new person going into an organization where it feels like everyone's kind of established. And one of the things that we hear sometimes from employers is that it's so important for folks to be able to communicate and work within a team, and especially to be able to work across difference and across different like skills, backgrounds, and teams as well. Can you all speak to any one of those areas? What's some advice you would give to students around developing relationships and working with others?
Yeah, I would say, so in my role, I work with mostly people that are in different departments. And so I tend to be kind of maybe the project leader, but I pull from a lot of different departments. And so everybody speaks a different language, sometimes literally because you add in the international component. And so what I always try to do is just set expectations up front and kind of have maybe just a quick chat if I can with everybody individually to say, what do you need from me? And here's what I need from you. Because I think most people just want to have a general sense of here's what I need to contribute and here's what I'm expecting in return. And I think having those conversations early on shows that you're being proactive and you're kind of dedicated to the success of the project and that you care about that person individually. And I think one other skill that's really important is the active listening of what are they saying, why are they saying it, and actually understanding what are they trying to tell you. So it's not just, nodding your head, and sometimes it's harder, virtual, because again, you have the Zoom fatigue and whatnot. So it gets more and more challenging, but I would just say spend time actually focusing on the words that they are saying and understand the relevance and why, because it will unlock so much more that will make your job a lot easier, understanding how they work, what's the problem that they're currently solving, because sometimes people don't just explicitly say, here's the issue I'm having. Sometimes you have to kind of decode it. And so get good at listening, because, that's something that will always be important.
Yeah, two notes on this. One has already been said several times today, but ask questions. Like Kenzie said, be as curious as possible. That will open connections and make relationships. And then two, if you're in a position similar to me where you're coming in with a class of multiple people that are all brand new, again, get out of that comfortability. So that will be like your safe haven to just hang out with your peers and just be with, like, for example, we have a large cafeteria on campus. If you just go sit with them every day, you're going to get used to that. But if you ask a senior on your team, hey, can I have lunch with you today? They might have people from other departments, even just that outside of the office interaction when you're on break or whatever, getting outside of just your peers. So in my situation, we were all brand new. This is a class of 6, and these are the people you train with, the people you switch rotations with. Like, these are your people in your program, but also identifying yourself in your own roles and reaching out to people on those teams, even though they're switching and the class is like your only constant. It's important to not always go back to the same group. And if you go to another group for lunch for one day, I mean, you can go to your other group again the next day. It's just about being the person to reach out, especially when you're lower down on the totem pole. I would say it shows a lot when you're the one to have initiative to say, can I have lunch with you? Or I'm interested in what you do. Can we get a 30-minute call like Kenzie? So yeah, I would say reach out.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think really similar, like just listening well and not assuming that you understand what somebody's saying or what they actually want. And my work, like similar to Connor, like I get to work with people all over the globe. So like there are a lot of times where literally language differences are an actual barrier to communicating. But it's also just like, you know, slang or accents, or sometimes like I just don't actually understand what people are saying. I had one of my friends join a call a few weeks ago, and she's from Uganda, which is like which was the British had a large influence in Uganda's development. And she joined a call and she kept saying, Kenzie, how is the going? And I was like, I don't know, like, is she asked me, how's it going? Because I'm not getting it. And I was like, Jocelyn, like, what are you asking? She goes, how's the going? Like, what's the going? Am I missing something here? And she's like, you don't know that phrase? Like, oh, it's, yeah, just how's it going? I was like, oh, okay. But it was like, we just had a good laugh over it. Cause I'm like, oh, I learned a new phrase. Like, she's like, yeah, it's a very British phrase. I'm like, okay. But things like that happen a lot, which I think maybe my advice is like, expect that there are going to be misunderstandings at times, and then like allow yourself the grace when that happens and you didn't get it right, but also just like, you know, building enough relationship where you can have a good laugh with it about the people you're working with and be like, oh, like, oops, sorry, I missed that one. Like, okay, let's move on because we can recover from that. Especially if it's a smaller one. But yeah, give yourself the opportunity to just ask a lot of questions, make sure you're actually understanding what people are really looking for, like even just repeating it back to them. Somebody saying like, hey, can you do this for me? It's like, okay, you're asking for me to do this by this day, and just like being able to repeat it back in your own words, making sure that you're on the same page with somebody. That will help so much more than getting like assuming that you know something, doing the project, coming back and then being like, that's not what I asked for. Like I would much rather ask the questions up front.
Awesome. I know we're right at time, but I want to squeeze in one more question because I know we get this question from students a lot in terms of 9 to 5, 8 to 5. That's a lot of time. What do you do for fun? How do you make sure you squeeze it in? And how do you find balance?
I'll start. So I still enjoy going to the gym and working out, and you know, I try to read when I can. I think my hours change, and so each day it could start at 5 a.m. it could end at 10 p.m. and so you have to adjust very quickly. But you have to, I mean, it's not always just about you know, finding balance, but intentionally setting time for yourself, because you're not in a position where you can just keep working. Nobody's built for that. So finding that outlet and doing it in a healthy way is important. Whether it's 30 minutes, take a walk around the block, whatever it is, you got to get away from your desk. So just be kind of determined to do that.
Yeah, I'd say it's just a matter of setting boundaries. So mine is a set hours role, and my job had the flexibility of letting me work 7 to 4. So my husband is in construction. He starts at 6 a.m. and usually gets off by 3. So me having the flexibility of working 7 to 4 means that our evenings are actually aligned, which is really nice. And then also one of my largest hobbies, and obviously things that we have to do every day, is cooking, because we always have to eat. So even if I have to get back on at 8 p.m. to finish a task, between 6 and 8, I am never online. So just setting boundaries like that work for your life is really important. And maybe during month end close, I'll get on the weekends, but generally outside of that, at the position I'm at, I am not, it's not necessary for you to contact me on Saturday. I will get back to you on Monday. So if you're in a position where you can set those boundaries, do it. And just don't forget your hobbies from college. Don't let them fade, I would say.
Last word, Kenzie.
Yeah, well, I think the boundaries conversation is huge, and I'm kind of glad that we're closing on that one, because jumping into something new, and like to Connor's point, when you want to say yes to every opportunity and you want to like take all those up, it's really hard then to say like I'm gonna shut it off and just be a friend, a sister, whatever your role is in the relationships you're in your life. But one of those things for me was like I deleted my email app off my phone, so I'm not getting like pinged with my emails all the time, because to me that was like a constant distraction. And I was like, oh, I need to respond to this now, I need to do this. It's like, actually no, like to Emma's point, like I'm not that important, like you can wait for a response on Monday morning, like that's okay. But yeah, I adopted a puppy last year, and so she is the majority of my extra fun time. I've loved like just exploring different parks in the area with her, like going on vacations. I love traveling, so I'm like probably the most avid Google Flights user that's ever existed. I'm like constantly booking a next trip and vacation. So that's most of my time is puppy travel.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences with us. Thank you to the students who joined in for this Career Week program. And definitely, welcome home to our alums. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Now that you've been a few years out of graduating from North Central, we hope to bring you back to share a little bit more about your next steps, because we know that everybody grows in their experiences. So thank you for staying connected, and thank you for joining us today. Card 101 and 102 students, don't forget to sign into your Google form.